Greetings, it's Heikki, vocalist for the band Human Target, and we got some questions to answer, so let's just get to it. First question, what's the story behind the band name Human Target? It really doesn't have one. We just had to come up with a name, and I suppose Heikki, our bass player, took it from a 6 Feet Under song, so that's about it. Next question, can you share the creative process behind Human Target EP? I certainly can. It was a difficult one. We really didn't have any money for it, so we ended up spending almost nothing while making it. We only had some outside help for the drum tracks, and apart from that, we just spent a lot of time toiling in the basement, so to say, with less than optimal equipment for the vast majority of the time, and it took us about a year to get the record out, which is only 6 tracks, so it was a long time for it. It wasn't a whole lot of fun, but given the resources we were working with, I'm quite happy with the result. Next question, what themes did you explore in this release? It's a lot of different stuff, but I suppose we are, at least I am personally, into quite traditional horror themes, serial killers and werewolves and sex and violence and things like that. So it's not gore per se, but it's definitely dark. A lot of the lyrics that I write personally come from some kind of almost comically insane ideas that I just come up with in my head, and then I just write them out and make them as morbid and brutal as I possibly can. As for the album cover, it's not customized. It is customized for us, but it wasn't made for us specifically. So we just saw some cover art that we liked, potential cover art at that point, and we decided that it would make a good album cover. So we picked that one up. Next question is very interesting. In your opinion, is having a label deal crucial in today's music industry? I can only speak for myself, but personally I don't think it is. It used to be, because that was the only way to get your music heard. But this day and age, I don't think it really does that much for furthering how to put it. It doesn't do as much as it used to for promoting the band. It's not necessary. Of course, it's nice to have a physical copy of something, but it doesn't really change anything in terms of getting shows or even reaching more people. Personally, I haven't bought a physical copy of an album for some 20 years. So in that sense, no. And also, a lot of the so-called record deals that you can get these days are actually not record deals at all. They are just paid promotion by labels, which in my opinion kind of defeats the purpose. Because as an artist, I'm not willing to pay anyone anything for publishing my music. They can do it without us receiving a lot of benefit from it, and I'm fine with that. But what I'm not okay with is paying out of pocket for it. So, and for talking about my previous bands, the record deals haven't really benefited me in any way financially, and I don't think that for such small bands such as Human Target, it doesn't really make any financial difference anyway. So ultimately, I would say no. It's a thing of the past in a lot of ways. Next question. When did you first start listening to death metal, and what led you to discover and become a fan of the genre? For me, it was in my teenage years, so it's probably quite a typical response. And I suppose it was the same for the rest of the guys as well. As it tends to go, death metal is very seldom the first style of music someone listens to, so it's an acquired taste as much as anything else extreme in the world. I think for any musician, it's a necessary thing to get acquainted with because it's musically very interesting. It's raw and it's brutal, but it's also oddly mathematical in a lot of ways and beautiful. If you could change one thing about the music industry, what would it be? Mm, I don't think that bands such as Human Target really even belong in the realm of music industry. This is art for the sake of art and subculture for the sake of a subculture. It's not really a financial apparatus or a part of a financial apparatus the same way as more popular or mainstream music. But generally, I mean, the popularity of death metal comes and goes, right? So sometimes you see more of it, sometimes less of it, and of course this brings in all kinds of people, and sometimes there are attempts to financially exploit bands for whatever reasons. So I don't know if it's something that can be changed, but of course sometimes promoters and other people don't treat bands quite right. So in terms of live shows, it's very important to accommodate the bands as much as one possibly can, because that's the only way for bands to make any money at all. And if that works, then kind of everything works. Next question. Have you encountered any memorable epic fails during live performances? Well, not epic, but fails definitely. And I myself remember one time I was inebriated, so to say, and intoxicated to the degree that I completely forgot about the structure of the song and couldn't really catch on to where I was supposed to be singing and where not. So that happened one time, and it was quite stressful and shameful afterwards. So that's my worst show I have ever done, and that didn't happen again. But I'm sure there are a lot of minor fuck-ups here and there. Are there any recent music or movies that have deeply impressed you? As for recent music or recent movies, I don't really watch a whole lot of movies, and I'm not sure if I listen to a lot of recent music either, to be entirely truthful. But I keep discovering new things all the time in terms of music. But I don't really listen to that much death metal. Far less than I used to. But that doesn't mean that I don't listen to some. And of course, places such as YouTube are very, very, very valuable to, in terms of discovering new music to listen to. And that's something I appreciate about this day and age, is that you have access to almost everything at all times. So that is good. Next question. What are your thoughts on the future of death metal as a genre? I think it will always be there. Death metal is not about to go anywhere, and some have speculated that it's kind of a dying style because a lot of the people playing it are middle-aged men, such as myself. But I see young people entering the scene all the time, and musically it's doing quite well. I mean, it's just not only repetition of the old things, but there is genuine creativity there. So I think the future is looking very bright, in my opinion. Very good indeed. Can you describe the current death metal scene in your area? It's small, of course. because this is a small town, about 250,000 people, or a small city, you could say. So there are bands, and there is a lot of, well, some death metal activity. It's not a huge scene, but it exists. It exists, and it's not completely inaccessible for the lack of shows or something. So there's a lot to see and hear. What's your top favorite death metal album of all time and why? That's a really, really tough question. There's a lot of great death metal out there, but I guess at least some members of the band, myself included, would maybe say Human by Death. That's one damn good album. I used to listen to it a lot when I was 18 or 19 years old. Haven't listened to it for a while though, I maybe should. The best death metal album cover art ever. It has to be Cannibal Corpse, Tomb of the Mutilated. Because it's the ugliest possible picture you can imagine. It's brutal, it's violent, it's sexual, it's depraved. It kind of brings together everything death metal is about, for me at least. So that has to be the one. Is there a death metal song or album that deeply resonated with you, shaping your perspective or evoking intense emotions? I suppose it has to be some of the first things that I heard in terms of death metal. I remember I bought an illegitimate copy of Cannibal Corpse, a Gallery of Suicide, when I was 12 or something, 12 or 13 years old. At first it didn't even sound like music to me, and I for some reason I just kept at it, and I kept listening to it, and I couldn't understand what was going on. It was something completely unheard of. And from that I moved on to Death and Cryptopsy and Nile and bands like that. And I suppose those early years, at least for me, impacted me a lot more than any of the recent death metal that I have heard, even if some of the recent stuff might be more progressive or creative or whatever. But I suppose it's always what you hear first sounds better than anything that you hear afterwards. And that shapes you. And so it was like that for me too. How does the lyrical content impact your appreciation of the genre? It certainly does. It certainly does to a degree, because lyrics are a part of the song. I myself spend a lot of time honing them and trying to get them right and trying to be as creative and as eloquent as I possibly can within the boundaries of that brutal and ugly style. But I don't think that avoiding work in that department will lead to a good album. The words should and the lyrics should be matching the music, not only thematically, but it should flow. It should flow, and it should be poetic in a depraved way. I think that's the point. It's like making a horror film. In order to be really ugly and disgusting, it has to be well made. And if there is something cryptic about the lyrics or something that is left up to the listener to interpret, it makes it a lot more impactful and a lot more powerful. What plans do you have for the future of Human Target? We just want to play more shows. We want to play more shows, and we might be possibly recruiting a new guitar player in the future, since Tommy is no longer in the band due to some health issues he's been having. So that remains to be seen, but we might become a 5-piece band once again in the future. I'm not sure about that yet. But generally, just playing more shows, and we will be putting out some new material next year. I hope we will be able to start recording in January or February, probably February or March, to be honest. But there's new stuff on the way, new songs, catchy ones, much better than the previous ones, I would say. Any message for Death Metal Promotion channel subscribers? I really appreciate, and I can speak for the whole band, really appreciate the support and taking the time to listen to our music and keep supporting the bands. Thank you.